Insurance is probably the most expensive piece of paper you're ever going to own. Whilst providing health insurance is mandated, unfortunately, there is no mandate about the level of health insurance.
That's a really important question, isn't it?
In my opinion, if you're giving any kind of intellectual advice, then yes, you need it.
Today's expert is Sonny Ridgewell. He's the Managing Director of Beneple, and he's going to come and explain to you and I what you need to do to make sure you're adequately protected, but also what happens when you're not. And I promise you, some of his stories are really scary.
His father always told me, what's cheap is dear. You get what you pay for in life. Health insurance is no exception.
Wow, that's really important, isn't it? Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. Right, let's talk about a really sexy subject today, one you're going to be super motivated to listen to. Insurance. I know it sounds boring, but it's a really important subject. Here in the UAE, as well as many other parts of the world, having the right amount of medical insurance is critical, and employers are not always focused on doing what's right for their employees. Today's expert is Sonny Ridgewell. He's the Managing Director of Beneple, and he's going to come and explain to you and I what you need to do to make sure you're adequately protected, but also what happens when you're not. And I promise you, some of his stories are really scary. So let's cue the music and get into the awesome Sonny Ridgewell. All right, folks, let me tell you about IOPN, the Internet of People. IOPN is the next iteration of the Internet, using revolutionary blockchain technology that's built on decentralized community ownership. Now, when I say decentralized community ownership, I mean it's not only controlled by a bunch of tech giants. Instead, everyone who's part of it has a say and a stake in how things run. It gives regular people like me and you and businesses and brands an easy and fair chance to grow and make some money and build communities. IOPN is making things happen through a few key verticals. Now let's go through them. OPN Chain is a cutting-edge layer 1 blockchain that's efficient, scalable, and eco-friendly. iCognitive, a set of AI tools changing how we develop apps. Yeah, develop apps. OPNverse, a dynamic, hyper-realistic, AI-powered platform that's making Web3 experiences better. Big organizations like Dubai Multi-Commodities Center, Dubai World Trade Center, and Ras Al Khaimah government are already seeing the potential with IOPN themselves. It's about creating a Web3 future where technology serves us, us, the people, unlike what Web2 did, where we often end up serving big tech companies. Check out the Internet of People today and see how you can leverage their ecosystem. I promise you, it's worth the time. Sonny, thank you so much for coming to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
So you and I have known each other for a while, so we better give people the background so that people don't think there's two strangers having a chat today. So first of all, introduce yourself, tell everyone what you do, why you do it, and how we're connected.
Sure. So Sonny Ridgewell, been here 12 years now in the Middle East, Dubai. I've been at Beneple Insurance Brokers for the last 5 years, running it as MD for the last 3.5 years. And we work together, and you're the chairman of Blue Sky Thinking Group.
Okay, good. And you're an insurance guy through and through. Okay, so today what I want to try and do is teach people about this subject that on the surface of it can appear quite boring, okay, to some people. But in reality, it's a lot like, you really appreciate having a good doctor when you get sick. And I think you really appreciate having good insurance when something goes wrong, don't you? But if nothing goes wrong, then, it's almost like, why am I spending that kind of money?
Insurance is probably the most expensive piece of paper you're ever going to own until you need it, and then it's the best money you've ever spent. That's how I usually compare it.
It's a great way of describing it. Okay, so MD of Beneple, just describe to people what Beneple is, just to make sure they've got a good understanding of that and the different aspects of it.
Sure. So Beneple is an insurance brokerage. We're a corporate insurance brokerage, so we look after businesses, mitigate their risk, be it group medical insurance for all their staff. That's usually the biggest spend of a company. Unless they're in manufacturing or power, energy, oil and gas, then they may have some very valuable assets they want to insure, be it shipping, be it property, buildings, fleets of vehicles, etc. And Beneple is one part of Blue Sky Thinking Group, which is a holding company that underneath that sits Beneple, the insurance arm. We've got Finsbury Wealth, which is a wealth management company based in the DIFC. We've got Safe Hands, which is a corporate health and wellbeing company. And we've got a new business launch recently called Happy Work.
Okay, all included. And then we've also got the HR platform.
Sorry, we've got Beneple HR as well, yeah. I'll get told off for not mentioning that, yeah.
All right, so we've got these different businesses in the group, but you're in charge of insurance. Let's talk about insurance, because a lot of the time it's kind of like, people are forced to buy insurance, so their first interaction with it. Actually, a great example is my daughter's, I've just bought her a car. So she's passed the driving test recently, and her car gets delivered on Thursday, all right? And today's Wednesday, so tomorrow. And so this is her first experience of learning about insurance. And she's like, what? No, you gave me a budget for the car, Dad. We spent the budget on the car. And I'm like, well, you need to pay for the insurance as well. And she's like, well, how much does that cost? So we got her a quote. And she's like, for what? £2,000 for what? And I'm like, well, it covers your car. If somebody drives into you, they repair it. If you drive into somebody, it's repaired. Someone steals your car, it's replaced. She's like, I live in the countryside. That's never going to happen.
I was about to ask, that's in the UK, I take it?
Yeah.
So in the UK, you insure the driver, whereas in the UAE, you insure the vehicle. So it's a lot cheaper generally in the Middle East. Plus, it does happen from time to time, but theft and vandalism isn't as rife as it would be in Europe, say. So premiums here are a lot more affordable.
Right. Okay, so that's our first kind of introduction to insurance. And let's think about insurance then from the area that you think about it from. So let's break all of the different insurances down. So the big kind of like one, 80% of your business is medical insurance. Okay, talk to us about medical insurance. What's good about it? What's bad about it? How it became, legal that we had to have medical insurance here?
Okay. So obviously the UAE in its current state has been around for 50 years, and expat companies, international companies have been coming here more and more over the last few decades. Dubai's done a wonderful job of advertising, marketing itself, and the days of social media, etc. It's not that place in the desert anymore. It's a wonderful, vibrant city full of opportunity. International companies, whenever they've set up branches or divisions around the world, be it the Far East, Middle East, South America, wherever you name it, part of those expatriate packages would normally include health insurance for the employee and sometimes their family members as well. Part of the, we're going to send you somewhere else, wonderful and exotic, we're going to take care of you. Now, only in 2016 did that become mandatory for all companies in Dubai in particular to provide health insurance for employees. It actually started being rolled out in 2014 for companies with more than 1,000 employees, and then it got phased in over stages. And 2016 was when it became mandatory for all Dubai companies to provide health insurance to employees. A couple of years prior, it was already the case in Abu Dhabi, and Dubai followed suit. And as of today, it only applies to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but there's a lot of talk of the Northern Emirates also following suit. So it will become mandatory for any employer anywhere in the UAE to provide health insurance. Now, whilst providing health insurance is mandated, unfortunately, there is no mandate about the level of health insurance. So what you find is these same international companies I mentioned before, they understand expatriates living abroad, we need to give them good health insurance. And if you're in the oil and gas sector, for example, quite often it will be Bupa. If it's a company originally from Aberdeen or Houston, Texas, they'll typically give very comprehensive cover. It's a dangerous job when you're offshore. And part of that package, again, we need to make sure we're taking care of our employees. Now, a startup company, you've got to try and keep your costs under control. So you might not have the budget to give everyone Bupa from day one. You just want to make sure you've ticked the boxes and you're compliant. So where we see some challenges is both from a financial perspective, trying to keep the costs under control, keeping it affordable, but at the same time providing good healthcare to everyone, and two, making sure the healthcare is adequate, because again, most expensive piece of paper you own until you really need it. And when you really need it, you're grateful that you spent that extra money to have comprehensive cover rather than something very basic to just tick a box.
Well, let's talk about it from some other aspects then. So if a company goes cheap, okay, and tries to get the medical insurance sorted out as cheaply as it can, just so it ticks the boxes to say they provide that cover, what kind of risk are they running by doing that?
I mean, it's like buying a cheap car. It might get you from A to B, but there's a far more likelihood it's going to break down and it's going to end up costing you more repairing it, take it to a garage, replacing parts, or maybe it's knackered and you need to buy another car. And as my father and his father always told me, what's cheap is dear. You get what you pay for in life, and health insurance is no exception. So I think going cheap, I completely appreciate and respect that for some it's a necessity. Maybe they're trying to bootstrap things and run a business on a budget until they, blow up and do very well. But it's almost counterintuitive, because if you're the entrepreneur that's starting up a business, your health is paramount to the success of that business. So I think it might be almost counterintuitive to go cheap on your healthcare. I think you invest in good quality healthcare, and if something goes wrong, it's imperative that you're back on your feet as soon as possible, so you can then go run that business. And it's not just if it's a one-man band, fair enough, but you've probably got loved ones to take care of. And if you do employ 5 people or 50 people, they're all counting on you. So it's important that you look after yourself, and if you unfortunately have an accident or fall sick, you're back at work and back at 100% as soon as possible. And that's where you really appreciate having good quality healthcare.
Talk to me about the impact for the employees of a company when they know that their employer doesn't care about their health and buys the cheapest insurance. What kind of lessons have you learned from companies that do that?
Well, I think employees, it's a case of, I probably need to work somewhere else. I think what you notice in certain sectors, so I'll use crypto as an example. Crypto companies popping up now and again. Dubai seems to be a bit of a pasture for crypto companies. They're adopting it faster than other parts of the world. Not so much today, but if you go back 2 years, crypto companies were recruiting almost exclusively from the banking world, ex-bankers. And the banking sector, historically, has always had very high-level, comprehensive benefits, probably because they've got loads of money, too much money, you might argue. So they provide good healthcare benefits to their employees. Now, if you're going to try and recruit someone from an investment bank in New York or London or Tokyo and say, come and live in Dubai, sure, what's the health insurance like for me and my family? It's with X company, and it's a company you've never heard of or have any idea how to pronounce. It might just make you a little bit apprehensive. Is it worth the risk? And I think now we're seeing people ask more questions around the healthcare and the employee benefits rather than just the salary. Because, salary is great, but if you're sick and not getting the care that you need because the company's gone cheap on their medical insurance, again, you've probably rolled the dice and it's gone against you.
Well, it's interesting is that the whole wellbeing thing becomes an interesting conversation. So what is it yesterday in the news? They were saying there was a tech company, I don't know if it was Dell or somebody like that in America, had asked all of their employees to come back to work. And if they didn't, they wouldn't be eligible for promotion moving forward. And half of them said, fine, I don't want a promotion. So I'm wasting an hour and a half in the morning getting ready and going to work, an hour getting home from work. It's 2.5 hours a day, 5 days a week. They add that up over the course of the year. I'm giving you an extra 150 hours of my life and I'm not getting paid for it. So if I was paid for those 150 hours, then maybe there's a conversation to be had. And it just it reminded me about how when we look at businesses, how business owners really miss the understanding of the employee. My daughter went to work for a real estate brokerage here, and the insurance is basic. And she's got some medical issues at the moment. And so I paid personally for the increased premium so she could have better insurance. But the company were like, well, we tick the box. And to me, when you're 20 years old, 22 years old, whatever that may be, you don't think about illnesses and stuff like that very often. But let's say it was a company of 50 people and there was crap medical insurance and somebody got cancer and that cancer cover wasn't provided, or someone was in a car accident and it wasn't provided. How quickly would that filter to the rest of the employees about what's going on here?
Absolutely. I mean, again, I think you've really got to start then asking questions. Is this the right place for me to be? Obviously, my company, we work in health insurance, so wellbeing, healthcare is at the forefront. We've seen it firsthand. We've seen a lot of companies come unstuck because they've gone cheap, and then inadvertently, maybe we'll just wait a week and then we'll sort out the insurance, and that person's ended up in hospital, in a coma, in intensive care, in an accident, all sorts of scenarios. And the company's ended up in a very difficult moral and financial position because maybe there's a way to squirm out of paying that bill, but morally they probably feel they ought to. and legally they may well be liable, depending on what's passed up until that point. It's funny you mentioned the working from home, returning to work. I mean, I think we're similar, bit old school. I prefer to be in an office environment personally. I'm on the road a fair amount because of my job anyway, but I manage a team of people. So trying to manage a team of people remotely or on a Zoom call or on the phone every 5 minutes, sure, it can be done. But is it as effective? Personally, for me, I don't think so. But what we did do from an employee wellbeing perspective is when we had all the rainstorms earlier in the year, it was taking some of our staff 2 hours to get to the office. It made absolutely no sense for them to waste 4 hours a day on a tram, on a bus, because some of the metro stations had closed down. Not a tram, sorry, metro and bus services to replace the closed stations. Pandemonium in some cases where the station was just absolutely congested. So we said, look, work from home. We had another member of staff based in Sharjah. Sharjah was perhaps more heavily affected than Dubai was. Abu Dhabi was hardly affected at all. So the member based in Sharjah, we said, look, work from home until the waters have subsided. So I think you just got to be sympathetic and adapt. And, if your business can operate remotely, then great, everyone can work from home. We saw it with some of the companies we insure where 2 years post-COVID, they were still struggling to get people into the office more than 3 days a week. I think some businesses have learned to adapt. I think it was, I don't know, can I say company names? I think it was it was Oracle. I was at a dinner and someone worked at Oracle. I said, we had 2 buildings in Internet City, and post-COVID we realised we don't need as much office space, and they gave back one of the office buildings and saved a fortune on rent. Conversely, we see other companies that now post-COVID are flourishing. You mentioned real estate, and they're doubling down and they're opening new offices and new showrooms and new this and that. So absolutely, and there's lots of online businesses as well where you don't need an office presence. So, I guess horses for courses. But I think employee well-being and being flexible and adapting is very important. And healthcare is just something where there is no compromise.
So people go for a job interview and they talk about the salary, the role and what's involved, and they'll say, is there medical insurance? And the employer will say, of course there is. But I bet most people going for job interviews don't say, can I have a look at the policy? Or can you tell me more about that insurance that I have and how it protects me?
Well, it's funny you say that. Actually, Dubai's a small place. So obviously there's various, whether you're playing sports and part of a network, a business group, whatever it may be, it doesn't take much of a conversation to realize, I know who your employer is, or I know someone there, or a friend of mine, my next door neighbor. Dubai is a small place, as big as much as it's growing. And the longer you've been here, the smaller it is. We will have people literally reach out to me and members of my team and say, I've been asked to reach out to you and ask, is this covered? Is that covered? So quite often, I think where we try and differentiate ourselves from the rest of the market, because like real estate, insurance brokerage is a saturated business. There's 200 licensed brokers in the market, and then there's a few unlicensed brokers. How do we stand out? How do we differentiate ourselves? And one of the things is always being available. I went to, this morning, I told you I was in Jebel Ali. I was at a client meeting. I turned up and the receptionist, who's new to the company, I didn't recognise her, she didn't recognise me, signing in the book. She went, you're not this Sonny, are you? And there's a box of my business cards at the front desk reception. It's a manufacturing company with 200 employees. And I gave them a box of cards, said, anyone needs any help, give them my card. And it's half full now. And that would explain why some of their members of staff have reached out saying, I had one last night, is dental covered as part of my insurance? And when we take on a new client, we normally go in and explain what they have, what they don't have, what you do in the event of emergency, really help educate the company and its employees how to utilize healthcare when you do need it. Because again, the younger you are, the healthier you are, you think you're invincible. I certainly did. Not so young anymore. You take risks, you do, strenuous activities till you pull a muscle and realize you're getting old. But that if we do a presentation to 200 people, but 50 new people have joined over the last 6 months, then what about those employees? How do they stay educated? So we really try and make sure everyone understands what they need to do, how they're going to get the most out of their policy, be it, I wouldn't say basic, because we try and avoid companies who don't care about their employees. Frankly, we want to work with companies that really care about their employees, and they generally spend a bit more on their insurance. They don't all have the budget for Bupa or Allianz or Cigna, but they still have a good level of cover with access to good hospitals.
Okay. Do you think employees, when they go for job interviews, make decisions as to whether that employer is going to be the right employer, and they include things such as the insurance, medical insurance in there?
I think they do, but actually I see employers now choosing their insurance programs based on who they believe they're going to poach or, for competition that they want to hire talent from, knowing that they've got a really good healthcare program, they need to offer the same or better.
Yeah.
Having something inferior could be the difference between that quality talent leaving their company and joining their company, leaving their current company and joining your company, or staying where they are, because healthcare is a concern for them.
So when recruiting great talent, you have to be highly aware of this if you're building your business, because you want people to come in and feel like they've got other benefits over and above their salary that are valuable.
Absolutely.
Okay, good understanding. So horror stories, you've seen obviously in the industry for a long time. What kind of horror stories have you seen? What problems have people faced?
I kind of touched on the example earlier, but it always sticks with me because it was a company that wasn't a client at the time, but then became a client. And I think perhaps they felt the broker they had previous wasn't doing as good a job as they could have done, or we could do a better job than they could have. And it was where an employee started at the company, and instead of making sure that they were enrolled under the insurance first before actually starting them, they were a senior position within the business. They wanted to get started as soon as possible, and literally a week into the job, health insurance hadn't been done yet, and that senior member of staff ended up in a coma, passed away, which is obviously very sad. But up until the point of passing away, run up a health insurance bill in Dubai over 500,000 dirhams, which the company felt obliged, and it probably was the right thing to do, but to pay that.
Yeah.
But the biggest claims we see typically are premature births, and sometimes it's twins or even triplets, and if they are born early and go into NICU, then those bills can rack up real quick, especially if it's in a top tier hospital, an expensive hospital.
Mm. I think about people that have claimed on insurance and never got it, employers that actually didn't get the cover required. That always that gap between the leavers and the new starters, which you expressed there, making sure that's really that T's really crossed, because lots of people have arrived over the years in Dubai and done the first couple of months with nothing.
Yeah.
Not even a visa, as they've been setting themselves up and getting established. Their employers are like, it's in process, and it wasn't in process as quick as it could be. That's medical insurance. So what kind of other insurance do companies buy? We've got fleet insurance, so that covers the fleet of cars. That's pretty simple. There's I suppose aviation insurance as well, which will include aeroplanes. Yeah. But talk to me about the other kinds of insurance that corporates don't think about often. The people that own businesses where they may be missing a trick or two,
sure.
and the issues that crop up because of them missing this area.
So the world is evolving. We talked about a few things today that 10 years ago we probably wouldn't have been having the conversation. Crypto being one of them. Mm-hmm. Off camera, we were talking about, the world of AI and how that's changing the world. So there are insurances that have never been around before. I remember in my previous job, I was at the largest insurance brokerage in the world, and we had to, in our US headquarters, we had to come up with something that could insure or mitigate the risk of autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles. Now, Now, if you're a motor insurance company, who's liable if autonomous vehicle crashes? Is it the person sitting there reading the newspaper because the car's driving itself, or is it the manufacturer of the vehicle? So,
well, that's a really important question, isn't it?
Yeah, aviation you touched on. So, who insured the first airplane? It's a new risk. Insurance goes way back. That they say all the way back to the times of Roman ships on the sea. And creating a life insurance policy for fallen soldiers, right? And then you had Lloyd's of London, which was the kind of birth of insurance as we know it, and it's the shipping industry and insuring the cargo, the value of the cargo if it doesn't arrive at its destination because of weather, because of pirates, because of whatever. But there are new assurances all the time. So cyber it has come really to the forefront over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And again, blockchain and crypto is a big reason for that heightened awareness and concern. It's still very much in its infancy. It's still a fairly new concept. So there are only a few insurers that do health insurance. There are 60 insurers in the market in the UAE.
Yeah.
When it comes to when it comes to cyber insurance, there's only a few insurers that will go anywhere near it. And even then, if it's AI or blockchain related, they're still a little bit apprehensive. They're like, oh no, that's not really our appetite. but they'll have to come around to it eventually.
It's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. So there's always a new industry, a new product service offering of some sort somewhere that needs insuring.
That's right.
And so you think about that. So that needs insuring. It's like, how are we going to insure it? Well, we've never insured it before, but it needs to be done. What about when you think about this kind of stuff? What about business owners?
Yeah,
I'm really fascinated. So at the end of the day, I'm sitting here right now, and I own a business. And from that business that I own, there's going to be an inheritance to my kids down the road. I've got a business partner involved in my business. And so it should be fine. Things don't go wrong, do they?
So it's a very typical mindset of any business owner. If you ask an insurer, and I will differentiate, there are some insurers better than others without naming any names. If you ask the better insurers, they'll say that absolutely every business should have professional indemnity insurance, for example.
What's professional indemnity?
So professional indemnity protects the business itself in the event that there is a legal case brought against them. Okay. Now, ask an insurer, they'll say every single company needs professional indemnity. Now, that's fine in other markets where professional indemnity is fairly cost effective. It's pretty cheap, to be honest with you. And you've got a lot of entrepreneurs, one-man bands where it's very easy. In the UAE market, first of all, you need a trade license. So there's a lot of freelancers and entrepreneurs who don't yet have a business set up, but they're consulting at some level, and they say, "Oh, I want professional indemnity because I had it in the UK or I had it in the US." Because in the US, you can insure yourself. If you're a wealthy individual, you can insure yourself in case you run over someone's cat or break someone's leg skiing, and they then sue you for $50 million because you're worth $500 million. Doesn't exist here. You can insure entities, but not individuals for liability. Okay. You have liability on things like if you crash your car, or if you're in a property and leave the frying pan on and it causes a fire, then your property policy will have some third party liability. But I've digressed. Going back to your point, so business owner, every company should have professional indemnity. In my opinion, if you're giving any kind of intellectual advice, then yes, you need it. So if you're in...
So professional indemnity, so this is the kind of term that's not one I'm familiar with, okay? So I own a business. So you and I own a business, okay? We build it up. We've got 100 employees. It's going very well. And you have a heart attack and die. What happens?
Well, hopefully we've got good medical insurance and they can bring me back.
But hold on, you die, you own half the company, I own half the company, and you die, and now your shares belong to your wife.
Sure. Okay. So I remember a really real example of this, and it's not professional indemnity now. So now we're talking about really shareholders protection. And what shareholder protection essentially is, let's use a very simple example of a 50-50 partnership. Yeah. Two people own a business, and let's, for argument's sake, say I'm the one that has a heart attack and dies. Yeah. I'm probably more at risk of a heart attack given my BMI compared to yours. There's a few scenarios here. Either you're very, very kind human being and you make sure my wife is taken care of, and every penny we would have made together for the next 20 years, she gets every penny of it, which is great if the money's there. Yeah. If the business continues. Maybe without me in the picture, the business isn't as successful. So we both lose. Nightmare scenario is my wife says, I'm going to sell, there's someone approached me who wants to get into insurance. It's your arch nemesis, someone you don't particularly like, and she sells her shares to them on the cheap. Or there's another scenario which a lot of business owners don't like. My wife wants to come in and run the business with you and she knows nothing about insurance. If you're listening, darling, I hope you don't mind me saying. All of those scenarios are not ideal. So the idea of a shareholder protection insurance is it provides money so that you've got the cash immediately available to buy my shares from my estate. So you go to my wife directly and go, here you go, our business is worth $10 million. Yeah. His half is worth $5 million. Yeah. Here's your $5 million. You now own the shares. You can do what you want. You can either find a replacement.
If someone dies.
If someone dies. Yeah.
Okay, let's take my example. If I die, do I want a lump sum to be paid to me and then lose out on the future value of the business? Or do I want to think about that a different way?
That's a great question. That's up to you. I like the idea of perpetuity for not just my wife, but for my newborn son and his son and his son. But that would be down to whatever structure the business has in.
But that can be done. But types of conversations can be had, and then
100%, yeah. And insurance is just part of that vehicle.
Yeah.
But it's something every business owner needs to think of. So professional indemnity is someone opens a court case because they feel the advice you gave them resulted in a loss. The professional indemnity policy will cover not just the whatever financial award there is, but all your legal defense costs. So lawyers aren't cheap. If your lawyer says, okay, we'll take care of this for you, but our fees for the last 6 months is 500,000 dirhams, that policy will pay their fees or reimburse you for the fees that you've incurred. Okay. Then you've got directors and officers. So if we've got a business together and it's very successful and someone opens a court case, no problem. The professional indemnity policy will take care of the legal costs. But what happens if they're not satisfied, but now they want to go after, Spencer Lodge Inc. and they want your house, your cars and all your personal assets, your directors and officers insurance. And this is a really important one because, again, going back to hiring top talent, that talent is less inclined to join the company if they say, have you got a directors and officers policy in place? And you go, no. Well, that leaves them a little bit exposed because they don't know who they're replacing. Did they do something dodgy? Did they maybe... There's all sorts of scenarios. So, So directors and officers is another one that I think a lot of companies overlook.
I think protecting my shares, either to keep them or the value of them, and that's a decision I have to make so that my family can inherit my hard work, is for me how it should be. And I see lots of people with kind of like SME, medium-sized SME businesses, and this hasn't even been a thought, a conversation. They've not even ever picked up on it. A lot of them, when I've asked them over the years, they're very surprised about what it is. They didn't know you could do so many things. Now, to me, it's like insurance companies make money off finding clients and selling them premiums. It's kind of normal. And when they can't find clients, it's either because their processes are wrong, their attitude's wrong, or the clients have all gone away for the summer. When I look at you, where your kind of like background is, and I'm like, is it? And I think about that as like this kind of being in a position where we gently encourage and kind of persuade people to do the right thing versus being in a situation where we have these really honest conversations with people about protecting things, because everything is protectable. What percentage would you say of people that own businesses have shareholder protection? Based upon your experience, what would you say as a guess?
I would say in the low single digits. I think it's probably no more than 4 or 5%, which saying it out loud now is a little worrying, isn't it? But I think it's an afterthought. When you're building a business, your first thought is bringing money through the door, not spending. Look at ways to spend money. And when I've had conversations with business owners in the past, sometimes they look at the cost and say, that's something we don't need right now. Health insurance is mandatory. We're legally obliged to provide it. But when you can position it in such a way and explain it in such a way that this is not a cost to your business. This is like, if you don't pay the DEWA bill, the lights are going off. Well, if we don't insure the partners in the business and something happens to one of them, the lights are going to go off permanently. It's not pay your bill, we put them back on. And I think it's overlooked for that reason. And there are other challenges too. We're in a part of the world where culturally, life insurance, as an example, has been a bit taboo. It must be Sharia compliant.
But there's got to be something around the psychology of this, because I coach some people in the mortgage industry in the UK, and they're like, we have a mortgage, people will buy life insurance or critical illness insurance to go with the mortgage, to protect the mortgage if someone dies. But the first sign of the client getting into any form of financial difficulty about anything, the first thing they cancel is insurance premiums. And to me, that's so counterintuitive about people's behavior. Like, why would you do that? Why would you cancel the premiums? You've got a mortgage, you've taken it out, you know what the premium is, you know what the premium is for insurance. The insurance is there in case something goes wrong. And now you've got no backstop at all.
Crazy, isn't it?
But to me, it is crazy. And I look at people that own business, and I tell you what I think the problem is. I don't think people get it. I don't think people sit down at night and start studying insurance. I just think they don't get it. It's just like a world away. I guarantee you, if you put different medical insurance policies in front of 50 people, I bet there'd be a whole bunch of them that would see them all as the same and no different. So to me, there needs to be like some form of education so that people can learn, because shareholder protection, as an example, is really, really, really important. If you own a business You have a family, you have business partners, okay, you're a major shareholder in a business, and something was to go wrong, what's in place? It's like, what's in place? So when they don't know about what's going on and they don't understand it, they're ignorant to their own, their own scenario. But what could be done, do you think, in your industry to take those examples and say, right, people, stop. You're growing your business, great. Just tell me right now what you're going to do if someone dies. What's the plan? And lead from there. Is there many people selling corporate insurance, shareholder protection insurance?
So typically, it's not something we actually do as an insurance brokerage ourselves. We would do that in partnership with our sister company, Finsbury. They would do the structure, the element of that, the investment side of it, if there's an investment side of it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of people that actually know what they're talking about. So there are people that do it for sure. There probably isn't enough. And I think of the ones that do, there's only a few that really understand it well enough to get the point across. Because again, we all know we need insurance. How many people actually buy travel insurance when they travel? I don't know if you personally do it, owning an insurance brokerage. Do you buy travel insurance? Okay. And
well, I get it on my American Express card.
Yeah. And similarly.
Do I?
Well, yeah. So similarly, I know there's some coverage on a credit card, and also
I bought it recently when I climbed the mountain.
Right. Okay. There you go. And also, thankfully, my employer provides good health cover for all the employees and their dependents and everything else. But that isn't always the case, and it's just that it's an afterthought. I'll be okay. I'll be fine. I'll worry about it another time. But when that choice is taken out of your hands, like your motor car, for example, and your daughter, using your daughter's example, she has no choice but to buy car insurance. And if, as a new young driver, if God forbid she has a prang in her car or parking at Tesco's or wherever it may be, Waitrose, she'll be glad she's paid that £2,000 and has got cover, and her brand new vehicle is back looking shiny and new again. You don't want to be driving around with an old banger with dents in it, do you? So it's a bit of an afterthought. There's a lack of education, there's a lack of awareness. It is a bit of an afterthought because it really is a good foundation, I think, for any business. While you're building that skyscraper, if the foundation is not set properly, it's all going to fall over at some point. And I think a lot of people see, let me build the skyscraper first, and then I'll worry about shareholder protection, because now I've got something that's worth a lot of money, rather than what if it's worth a lot of money in the future.
Yeah, I get that from a startup point of view. I really do. But I really believe if I went and chatted to some of my wealthy friends and said, tell me about your shareholder protection structure you've got in place.
What?
Okay. That's exactly how they'd respond. You are? Okay, because the level of importance it has is based upon the level of fear that's created around the subject, and the only way you're going to have the fear is by having the knowledge around it. So you've either learned about it or been taught it, so that you can see the risks you're running for your business. And lots of people say, don't they, I'm very low risk, I'm very cautious, I'm very careful for myself and my employees, but they're reckless for some of the decisions they make. Okay, give me another example of insurance where it's really essential and it's overlooked very easily.
I think group life is so not a million miles away from what we just talked about, but group life is another one where the penetration is very low, but also the cost is very low. Healthcare can be a huge expense to a business. It's often the biggest insurance cost for a company.
Yeah.
And to give you an example, and I use this example quite a lot, a company with, say, 200 employees, they might be spending 2 million dirhams on health insurance, which is 10,000 dirhams per person, more or less. Could be 15, could be 8.
Yeah.
But then a life insurance policy that gives everyone 2 times annual salary in case they pass away. And again, that money would go to the beneficiary, go to the loved one, whatever it may be. And you'd find that cost is probably a few hundred dirhams per person per year. It's pales in comparison. And yet it's such a good employee benefit. Going back to the scenario of we want to hire and attract top talent. What's your health insurance like? Well, this is what we've got. But we've also got group life insurance. So if something happens to you in the next 2 years, it's not just the risk of, did I make the right choice joining this company? What if something happens to you in the next 2 years? Well, your family's going to be taken care of, or at least they're going to give some compensation to replace the income that you've lost. So again, it's not a mandatory requirement. So when you're not forced to buy something, lots of people don't buy. I'm the opposite.
But I believe that no matter what the price is, if people don't understand the value it brings to them, then they don't buy it. And so they're not understanding the value. Because clearly it's very valuable. And so these employers don't see the value of doing it. An employee in this example group life, group kick, good critical illness cover, I think is like, we take care of you. You come work for our company, we take care of you. If something goes wrong, you get sick, guess what? We've got the best doctors in town. If something happens, okay, and you pass away, guess what? We've got an amount of money your family looks after. You know, if you've got cancer or something terrible like that, and you can't come back to work, we're going to make sure you're taken care of for the rest of your life. That's because we care as a business. Now, if you sit at an interview and you hear that, you're like, I'm in, I'm in, I want that job, because it sounds like it's a great thing to be experiencing, and they're valuing me. I'm the employee. I'm now being valued, and they care about my future, my well-being. So when I look at that kind of stuff, it always leans back to the same thing with me. It's like, how do we get out and stop people messing this up? Because there'll be people watching this right now. There'll be people listening. I guarantee you, there's a huge amount of people. So if you are listening, shout back at the blooming screen or shout at the volume button. Oh, so the mic. There's a huge chunk of people that are not insured. They don't have any form of insurance for anything, or if they do, it's some token gesture nonsense that they picked up along the way. There's loads of people out there that don't have these things, but also there's loads of employers out there that don't provide it. From your expert opinion to this audience and to HR directors out there, when it comes to choosing medical insurance and they don't know what to do, what are the three most important things for them to look out for?
Great question. My top three things are choose a broker who knows what they're doing. You want an expert that can understand the minefield for you, so you don't have to. I would say what's cheap is dear. So rather than trying to save 5%, it might be worth paying a little bit more for much more quality and a better experience for all your employees. And three, care about your employees. Show them that we care. You know, we're not looking to remove things, take anything away. We want to make sure that if, God forbid, anything happens to you, you're going to be taken care of. You're going to be back to health as soon as possible.
So when we consider business owners, there's lots of people here, okay? They've set businesses up and they're partners with their friends and whatnot. They've built a relatively successful business. And now if something was to happen, you know, they were hit by a bus on the Sheikh Zayed Road, you know, something happened and they died, okay, what should they be considering to protect themselves against something like that happening? Because I look at my business, and if I didn't have the right structure in place, my kids would become the majority shareholders in the business. And well, that potentially is a massive risk to the business, isn't it? If I died and my kids become the majority shareholders and they don't go, okay, you know, Danielle, you carry on and run it, but they go, no, I'm in now. Okay, that's dangerous for everybody involved. So what would you do? What advice would you give to someone like me in that situation?
That's a really great question. What I would suggest, my top three tips would be protect the business, protect the assets, protect the people.
Okay, so Sonny, I've got a business. There's two partners involved in the business. It's successful. It's been going on for a while, like many businesses in Dubai. Let's just take that as a scenario. And I die. So now my shares get inherited by my wife. My wife then maybe becomes the majority shareholder of a business she knows nothing about, and she decides she wants to take over. What can you do to protect the other business partner against that type of situation happening? Give me some tips.
My top tips to prevent that situation would be absolutely having a shareholders protection policy. That essentially means there's cash available to purchase the shares from your estate, in your case, your wife, who's inherited your shares in the business. And that enables your surviving business partner to purchase those shares from your wife, make sure your wife's family are taken care of, they get their end, and it means your surviving business partner retains ownership and control of the business. Because the scenario you've just explained there, for many business owners, would be the absolute worst case nightmare scenario, that someone's coming in, wants to run the business they know nothing about, or they're going to sell the shares to your biggest competitor. And your business partner probably doesn't want to jump into bed with your biggest competitor, as an example. So
wow, that's really important, isn't it? They could sell your shares. So my wife could inherit my shares. She could sell the shares to the biggest competitor, okay? And there's nothing the other shareholder can do about it.
Absolutely not, no. And, unless they had the cash available. If they happen to have the cash available.
Yeah, but do you not realize how scary that must be? And people don't get this. There is a massive amount of ignorance, I would say, in this.
It's as old as the time itself. You know, you've seen in history, there's lots of companies that have been in that same exact position, and the big competitors come up and sweep up the little guy, the family businesses. They can't compete. So I think if you want to prevent that from happening, shareholders protection is a must.
When I look at these different types of insurance, insurance isn't there for every day. It's for there just in case, isn't it?
Worst case scenarios. Yeah.
And so, but if you don't have it, okay, all of those people that were over the years that you've met, they say, I don't need that. I'm fit. I'm healthy. I'm strong. That won't happen to me. Okay, you've lost count of that for sure. Have there been times though when people are wrong and horrible situations have happened and that people didn't have the insurance, they didn't have the protection, and then their life turned into be a temporary nightmare?
Unfortunately, yes. There are, again, numerous examples of individuals that perhaps didn't prioritize their health or protecting their business. I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow arrives and they've not got the cover they should have just arranged when they had the opportunity, when they were advised to do so. It's not a question of me saying I told you so, but again, many examples of people putting it off until it's a classic example of someone not buying life insurance. I'll get round to buying life insurance and pass away, and you've got a family devastated by the bills that continue. You might not be around anymore, but your financial obligations are, your mortgage payments, a bad example, mortgage payment, but your bills, your rent, whatever it may be, that doesn't stop. So it's critical, really. It's so important to protect yourself, your business, your loved ones, everyone.
How can people get hold of you?
LinkedIn seems to be the place of choice these days. All the contact details are there.
If any of my audience want to send you WhatsApp, send you message, call you, ask questions, try and pick your brains a little bit, would you make yourself open to them?
Absolutely. Yeah. We get a lot of questions where we couldn't directly facilitate, but we'll always guide and advise and help people. Give some straight answers, not always what you want to hear, but what you need to hear.
You get it? Fair. Sonny, thank you so much for coming to join us today. It's really kind of opened my eyes, and I'm sure for everybody else, their eyes, as to some of the risks they run from the ignorance around not protecting themselves. And so your wisdom's been really valuable.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.